I only know how to set fires, not put them out." "Then make him come out," Lin Guanjun said. "Well, my lord, look at the state of him. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't move." Lin Guanjun sneered, putting his hand on Shan Qinghua's solar plexus. "Then say," he said amicably, "if your heart were to start freezing over, would he have the sudden impulse to come out?" "If that kind of thing can be broken through on sudden impulse, I recommend my lord try having a sudden impulse to see if he can do just that." And then he couldn't get out another word. Lin Guanjun quietly hummed an ice spell, his tune cheerful yet malicious. "Mobei, your uncle didn't really expect you to have a dog who refused to betray you. Even in these circumstances, wouldn't it be a pity if you were to lose such a good hound?" Near his heart grew a field of ice and snow. Shan Qinghua, lips turning purple, raised his hand. My lord." "Speak." "If you're going to freeze my heart like this, I can't scream aloud. It doesn't sound miserable enough. You won't get the sudden impulse that you want from him. I advise to hit me instead. I promise I'll do my best to scream very miserably." "Oh, but I'm very heavy-handed. If I can't control myself, I'll beat you to death. What then?" It's no problem. I can take it. I'm used to it, after suffering your nephews." Before he could finish speaking, Shan Qinghua personally experienced how heavy Lin Guanjun's hands could be. He didn't use demonic energy, preferring to rely entirely on physical strength to attack. However, Shan Qinghua clearly heard the sound of his every broken rib, as well as the sound of his throat hissing like he was leaking air after spitting up too much blood. As his back teeth started to faintly loosen, Shan Qinghua decided that, compared to his uncle and other demons, Mobei-Jun was goddamn fucking gentle, even amiable, practically a little angel. The longer he dragged this out, the more Lin Guanjun's impatience inched toward fury. He stepped firmly on Shan Qinghua's back and wrenched up one of his arms, grinning savagely. "Didn't you promise you would try your best to scream miserably? And yet your mouth is so secure that you haven't let out a single sound." This position had some extremely bad associations for Shan Qinghua. He hurriedly spat out the bubble of warm blood held in his mouth and screamed with great sincerity. Lin Guanjun hummed. "Not bad. It's a pity, but that's still not miserable enough. I'll help you out." From Shan Qinghua's shoulder came the terrible pain of flesh and tendons ripping. He opened his mouth, letting fear drown him, but he found that he couldn't make a single sound. Yet this pain didn't develop into an unsalvageable outcome. Suddenly, the arm that had been yanked behind him drooped limply down. A corner of a deep blue robe flapped in front of him, its collar billowing with wind and snow. Mobei-Jun had caught them off guard, diving out of the fire circle to land a palm squarely on Lin Guanjun's solar plexus. After being waylaid by this strike, half of Lin Guanjun's chest collapsed, demonic energy streaming out of it like a giant hole had been punched through his entire body. His heart chilled. This youngster's prior ability and the power in that strike could not be spoken of in the same breath. The delay had been long enough. Mobei-Jun had absorbed all the martial aspect the Mobei clan had passed down over generations. On top of that, he no longer feared the Black Sun immortal fire. He'd leapt straight through it. Though Lin Guanjun was full of dissatisfied resentment, he was by this point likely no match for Mobei-Jun. He could only hurriedly use ice to seal his own wounds, transform into a stream of black wind, and steal out of the ice fortress. Shan Qinghua, lying with his face pressed to the ground, didn't see any movement for a long while, and no one came to help him up. "Is he still mad?" he mourned internally. "No matter how you look at it, I was beaten to a pulp for you, and you're not even helping me up. This is just inexcusable." Then he heard a heavy slam. Grimacing in pain and with incomparable difficulty, Shan Qinghua turned over. Mobei-Jun had collapsed too. Two figures fallen in different postures beside a raging circle of fire lay quietly, collapsed like dead NPCs. Shan Qinghua finally realized that Mobei-Jun most likely had, in fact, not finished absorbing his clan's martial aspect, nor had he suppressed Lin Guanjun's demonic energy. Moments ago, he really had been taken by, quote, a sudden impulse, and fought with all his strength to scare Lin Guanjun away at the last moment. Now Mobei-Jun had exhausted his final ounce of energy, and had moreover been roasted to a crisp by the terrifying black sun immortal fire. So he had collapsed like a dead NPC. Though Mobei-Jun was lying straight and stiff on the ground, unable to move even a finger, his eyes were still forcefully glaring at Shan Qinghua. Under that stare, Shan Qinghua was no longer able to continue lying there at ease. He could only open his mouth to say, "That is, my king, you, don't struggle. Just lie down and slowly absorb it. The combined power of lords accumulated over generations isn't the sort of thing you can swallow down in a single gulp." That gaze didn't subside in the least. Shan Qinghua's heart pounded like he was being showered with a rain of needles. He finally managed to catch his breath and sit up, already trembling like a Parkinson's patient. Now Mobei-Jun would finally have to listen to him. He took a deep breath. "My king, in fact, in the first place, I didn't want to leave at this sort of time. I really didn't know that it just so happened to be the key moment when you were about to succeed your father's position. Why didn't you tell me about it earlier, when it was something so important?" Mobei-Jun used his expression to say, "Kneel down, cry, and admit you were wrong, and then I'll pardon you." The corner of Shan Qinghua's mouth twitched. To tell the truth, you shouldn't have brought me," he continued. "I can't do anything at all. I can barely serve as a punching bag for you to beat up from time to time. You saw me just then. I was thrashed this badly, and I only bought you a bit of time. But you seriously injured your uncle, and he probably wouldn't dare come back again. You're almost done digesting it, right? So I'll just leave first." Mobei's expression had eased a bit, but upon hearing this last sentence, cold light beamed from his eyes. "You're still leaving? You dare?" Having suddenly been bellowed at and still hurting from head to toe, Shan Qinghua was overcome with rage. He slapped the ground and yelled, "What don't I dare?" As one would expect, this strike couldn't scare Mobei-Jun, and it only made his own shoulder and arm explode with pain while stars burst in his eyes. Either way, Mobei-Jun couldn't move a limb, and Shan Qinghua grew bold in his fury, pointing at him. "I'll tell you the truth, then. I've endured you for too long, you pampered, spoiled young master. You vile-tempered, demonic second-gen." This was a monstrous degree of audacity. Mobei-Jun's face was full of disbelief. But Shan Qinghua's many years of accumulated grievance continued to spew out in this moment with the power of an arching rainbow. You saw that I had a good temperament, that I was easy to push around, and also that my cultivation was lacking, so I was fun and satisfying to torment, right? You thought I was really this, huh? What are you looking at? You gonna argue with that? I'm your dad. Call me daddy. I was just indulging you. Go on and try this with someone else, huh? Bingo would beat you to death, and the original flavor Shan Qinghua would shade you to death. No one likes getting beat up every day, and no one would actually be all cheery after getting beat up every day. I'm not actually a dog. Even with a dog, if you kicked it twice a day, given enough time, it'd learn not to bother you anymore. Mobei-Jun said, Do you want to die? Under the circumstances, the intimidation factor of these words had suffered a huge loss in value. I don't, said Shan Qinghua. And not only do I dare leave, I dare do other things. Would you believe it? This Peak Lord will, right here, right now, beat you back for every time you beat him before. You, Mobei-Jun said angrily. You what? You dare again? I tell you what right now, I really do dare. Come at me. With this, Shan Qinghua rolled up his sleeves, eagerly shaking a fist in front of Mobei-Jun's ashen face. Cold blades shot from Mobei-Jun's gaze, but Shan Qinghua wasn't frightened in the slightest. His fist swung in a strike straight toward Mobei-Jun's head. On instinct, Mobei-Jun averted his face, only to feel the skin of his cheek tighten. It was a very unfamiliar feeling, a bit itchy, a little bit painful, but entirely not the expected strike. Two of Shan Qinghua's fingers had pinched his cheek on one side and forcefully pulled. How's that? Does it hurt? While pulling, Shan Qinghua thought, This is not what I was fucking thinking of doing. Beat him. Yeah, beat him while he can't move. Tugging on his face and letting him off with just that. No matter how you look at it, you'll be getting the short end of the stick. But there was nothing to be done. Sure enough, Shan Qinghua still couldn't bring himself to beat that face. Cheek being pulled as it was, Mobei-Jun's words were unclear, but he persisted to say, You're done. Shan Qinghua cackled. You have backbone. You can still threaten me in this state. Daddy admires you. His other hand joined in, pinching the other side of Mobei-Jun's face. Sometimes he pulled those cheeks in opposite directions. Sometimes he pressed them together. Mobei-Jun's formerly aloof and noble image was wrecked, utterly exterminated by his treacherous pair of hands. All through it, Shan Qinghua was repeating, Does it hurt yet? Does it hurt? Mobei-Jun refused to yield his lofty air, but it was to no avail. Things like physiological tears could not be suppressed by lofty airs alone, and in the end, his cheeks were pulled until tears emerged at the corners of his eyes. Huh? It hurts. That's right. Shan Qinghua released his claws. When you were beating me all the time, it was at least 10 times as painful as that. How does it feel getting tugged on? Spoiled! Mobei-Jun's face went white with fury at this contemptuous, quote, spoiled, and his cheeks were covered in green and red fingerprints. It really was a sight to shock the eye and astonish the heart. When it came down to it, Shan Qinghua was in truth a coward. He had just committed a crime of passion and had his bit of fun. But after the fact, he began to fear being sent to the crematorium, especially when Mobei-Jun's face had recovered its normal shape. His expression was truly. Shan Qinghua's heart quailed at the mere sight of it. He hurriedly patted his hem, preparing to break into a run and leave. He had skidded a few large steps away at meteoric speed when Mobei-Jun shouted at his back. "If you want to keep your legs, stay here and don't move." On reflex, Shan Qinghua obeyed the order. He didn't dare turn around. "My king, I really am leaving." "Shut up. Come back." Shan Qinghua continued, unimpeded. "Even if you're angry, don't come looking for me. After I return, you absolutely won't be able to find me again. So don't spend energy on useless effort. So, my king, bye then." Mobei-Jun was nearly roaring. "If you have the guts to leave, then never let me see you again." Shan Qinghua turned a deaf ear. After a few steps, he added one more line. "I was very happy to meet you. Really, you're even cooler than I imagined." At this moment, he was in high spirits, radiant with delight, and wearing precisely the same expression he had worn in the split second he first set pen to paper to describe this character's first appearance. When he reflected on his true emotions and honest feelings towards the character under his pen, this really was embarrassing. Although, with parting near at hand, embarrassment was but a fleeting thing.